Hi guys, today I want to talk to you about 10 tips for putting together a competitive offer in today's crazy housing market. You don't want to miss this video. I'll see you right after this snazzy new intro. Alex McIvor here with Dunnigan Realtors in Sacramento, California. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about how to put together a competitive offer. The market is just as crazy. It's May 2021. And I know, in Sacramento and all throughout the country, it's really competitive if you are a buyer. So I just wanted to go over some tips and some things you want to think about when you're putting together your offer so you could be as competitive as possible and give yourself the best chance to win. Quick overview of the tips today: offering your kidneys and or other vital organs, naming rights for future children, begging, pleading, sounds similar to begging, a little different, threatening, and selling your soul to the devil. So stay tuned. You know it's not a good sign when I feel like I need to say that I'm joking. Please don't write those down. I know the market's competitive, but we're not quite there just yet. Although maybe in a couple more months, I'll actually do a video on all of those. Tip number one is to offer a higher purchase price. I know that that's not groundbreaking. I know I am not blowing anyone's mind with that hot tip, but it's just kind of the fact of the matter that's one of the best way, if not the best way, to get your offer accepted is to offer more money. If you know you're in a competitive situation, say there's 5 offers on a home, if you are offering at purchase price and the home is reasonably priced in this market, you're almost certainly not going to get it. That's just kind of the sad truth of the matter. There are other things you could do to make yourself more competitive, but in all likelihood, you're gonna need to come up at least a bit on that asking price, and then sometimes you're gonna have to come up a lot. There are situations where you will get the house right off the bat, even below purchase price in this market. But here in Sacramento, Ryan Lundquist just released some stats showing that on average, a home in Sacramento sold for 4% over ask. Obviously, there's variations, and that's the average, but that just kind of goes to show you that, yeah, you're probably going to have to spend a bit more. Keep in mind, that's also the highest that has ever been, at least since I think they've been, really recording the stats. So keep that in mind when you're putting together your offer and thinking about your purchase price. Tip number 2 has to do with financing. Cash is better than conventional financing, and conventional financing is better than FHA and VA financing. I know cash just isn't that practical for most people, so I'm not going to talk about that one too much. What I am going to talk about is that if you are on the cusp, say you're thinking about doing an FHA loan because you have, bad credit, but, there are some things you could do to get it up into the range so you could get conventional. Really try and stretch to get that conventional because a lot of the other loans are going to be conventional, and there's even a decent amount of cash. It's still not that common, but it's not unheard of. And FHA just has stricter requirements, and sellers know that, so they're not going to be as likely to accept that because they know it's just going to be a bit more difficult going through the escrow process. There might need to be some more repairs. So I would caution you against doing FHA if at all possible. I know sometimes that's, the only option available. And obviously, there's nothing you could do there, but if you can kind of stretch a little bit and do conventional, I would absolutely recommend it. Tip number 3, offer more earnest money. I normally recommend around 1%, usually round it up to the nearest thousand of the purchase price. In this market, you might want to do a little bit more. I don't recommend going above $10,000, at least here in California. The reason for that is that is the dividing line between small claims and superior court. So anything, $10,000 and one and above, you're going to have to settle in superior court, which could take a couple years. Before that, you'll have to go likely through mediation and arbitration, which can cost thousands of dollars. Whereas small claims court, that'll get handled typically within 30 to 60 days. That said, the more money you can offer for your earnest money or your initial deposit, they're the same thing, the better it's going to look. And also, if you do go through with the transaction, that's money you're going to be spending anyway in closing costs. So it's not really costing you any more, and it does make your offer look stronger. Tip number 4 is to split the fees. Those 4 fees are escrow, owner's title insurance, city and county transfer taxes. And for a frame of reference, those typically amount to around 1% of the purchase price. I know this tip sounds a little bit like just offering more money, and it sort of is, but it's a little bit more nuanced in that this is money that is more assured that the seller is going to get, versus if you offer, say a slightly higher purchase price, you go up by $2,000, $3,000. Well, they're not exactly sure if they're going to be able to keep all of that money because, you might be asking for some request for repairs or a credit that might cost that much anyways. So this is a little bit more valuable if you're on that, kind of smaller scale of, maybe offering a few $1,000s more. You might just want to offer to pay for all of the fees instead of just splitting them. Tip number 5 is to hit the like and subscribe button right now. It's very helpful to me. No, I'm sorry. That's not tip number 5. Tip number 5 is to reduce your contingency periods. The 3 main contingency periods are loan, appraisal, and inspections. And the standard times here in California for those, at least on the standard RPA, is 21 days for loan, 17 days for both appraisal and inspections. So you absolutely 100% want to reduce your inspection period. The standard is 17 days. I normally like to offer 12 days. That way it's short enough that it feels like it's been reduced, but you're still not in the 10-day period, which could be a little bit tight just with how slammed inspectors are. So it gives you a couple extra days. That's what I would recommend. Of course, it's on a case-by-case scenario. If the seller is asking for 7 days because someone else offered it, well, you might have to do that if you want to win. But right out of the gate, I normally like to offer 12. For loan and appraisal, you're going to want to talk to your lender or have your agent talk to your lender. You don't want to reduce either of those until you've spoken with them and seen what they can do. Because if they are slammed and they need that full 21 days, I wouldn't reduce it, because then you're going to put them in a bind and yourself in a bind if you need to come 17 days, remove that loan contingency, and your lender says, I need 3 more days. Well, you could have to remove that contingency without having final approval, and that's kind of risky. So don't touch those until you've spoken to your lender, and then they can give you a good piece of advice on, what they think that they could actually make work. So lastly is you could remove any of those contingencies. I don't typically recommend it. It puts you at a lot of risk. So make sure that you understand, if you are removing those, just what risks you are taking. That said, in this market, it's really, really competitive. And that's sometimes just what needs to be done in order to win. I don't like it, but if other people are willing to do it and you aren't, it puts you at a big disadvantage. So that's one thing to consider, but make sure you absolutely know what risk you're undertaking. Tip number 6 is to consider offering to pay some amount of cash in the event of a low appraisal. This is sort of like removing your appraisal contingency, except it's pared back. You're kind of qualifying it a bit. So you could, if the appraisal comes in low, say you're going to put $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000 towards that gap. But if the appraisal comes back, say $30,000 low, and you only offer 10, well, you still have that protection of the appraisal contingency, and you could back out of the deal. But that gives the seller some assurance that, hey, you know what? If it comes in $5,000 less, okay, well, the buyer's going to pick that up. So consider doing that. One thing I like about this tip is that if it does happen to appraise, it costs you literally nothing. and you now made yourself more competitive. So in this market, if there's something you could do that ultimately won't cost you more money and can make you more competitive, that's absolutely great. And it's one of the better options out there, I think, for making yourself more competitive. Tip number 7, don't ask for a home warranty. If you're the buyer, if you want one, you could buy it yourself, but it seems kind of silly to be offering to pay so much more above purchase price and do all of these other things where you're spending more money and then asking them to then give you back $500 of that for a home warranty. So if you're interested in getting one, I recommend get one on your own, but there's no need to make it a part of the contract. It just kind of muddies things up. Tip number 8 is to offer a rent back. So check in with the listing agent and see if that's something that these sellers are interested in. They might not want it, but they might actually think, oh, that could be nice to have, say, a few extra days to wrap things up, after close. So definitely check in with them, because if that's something that, they didn't really explicitly state, but you asked and they said, yeah, that would be great. Well, that makes you a little bit more competitive in a way that some of the other people that are also offering might not be putting that up because they didn't know that the sellers wanted that. Tip number 9 is to consider taking the home as is, aka you're not going to ask for a request for repairs. This one is sort of a pared back version of removing your inspection contingency. This is essentially saying you'll still get to do your inspections. You'll still get to back out of the deal if you find something during your inspections that you find untenable, or if you discover, a huge defect, something that just makes it so that, this house isn't right for you. You can still back out of it. But this is saying that, hey, I won't ask you to fix anything, especially when there's, a bunch of little minor things. Nope, the purchase price is the purchase price, and we're not going to try and ask for a credit back or a reduction in that. I like this option definitely a lot more than the removing of the inspection contingency totally, because you still have the option to walk away if you discover something huge, but it gives the seller the assurance that the purchase price that you offered is what they're going to get. And it's a good medium between the two. It doesn't expose you to as much risk that you would run into if you totally remove that inspection contingency. Tip number 10 is to write a buyer's letter. This one is probably my favorite of the list just because it is 100% totally free. If you are competing against offers that are kind of similar and you have a letter and they don't, well, the seller's likely going to go for your offer over theirs. That said, it's not going to bridge a gap. If someone else is offering $20,000 more, they're likely still going to go with them even if they didn't write a letter. But if you're around the same, they're probably going to be rooting for you. One tip, though, is to make sure your agent reaches out to the listing agent to see if they're even reading them. You don't want to go through all that effort to then have them say, you know what, we're actually just not reading letters anyways. It's pretty demoralizing. But if they are reading them, it's a free way to make yourself more competitive. And in this market, I absolutely recommend doing everything you can to make yourself more competitive. And if it's free, absolutely, it's a no-brainer. You should 100% do it. And there you have it. Those are my 10 tips for how to make yourself more competitive in this market. If you found this video helpful or informative, just like Bailey didn't, where she was snoring through the whole thing. So hopefully that doesn't come out on the audio, but please give me a like or subscribe. It's really helpful and it means a lot. If you have any questions or concerns, drop a comment down below or reach out to me via email or phone, and I'll be happy to answer them. So that's all I have for you today. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Say bye, Bailey.